All right, here we are dealing with divorce, difficult questions, biblical answers, lesson 11 in the series. This one's entitled Divorce Busters, and it's part 1. We're going to do 2 parts this week and next week. So having taken this class, I'm sure everyone is familiar with the high number of divorces that take place in America. I don't have stats for other countries, but certainly in America. At some point it was 1 out of 2. As a matter of fact, the state of Oklahoma leads the nation in the divorce rate, in the high divorce rate average. Of course, these are only percentages and figures, but these numbers really, for me, came into perspective when my wife, Lise, used to tell me about the kids at her school. She, in the past, worked as an elementary school secretary. And part of her job was to monitor the pickup of children at the end of the day by their parents, or the pickup of children like when they were sick, they had to leave in the middle of the day, so she had a certain protocol to follow to make sure that the child was safe and released into the proper, to the proper person. And I remember her explaining to me that each child had a file. And in that file were the special instructions as to who was or who was not permitted to take the child home from school. And it was amazing. This file included ex-husbands, ex-wives, abusive boyfriends, angry grandparents, adoptive parents who were now separated. I mean, she had a longer list of people who could not pick up the child than people who were allowed to pick up the child. So, a lot of times these warring couples would bring their battles right into the school as they struggled to maintain the possession of the child, and it was not a pretty sight. I wish I could say these were isolated cases, but unfortunately children in school with a mom and a dad happily working together to raise them are fast becoming the exception, not the rule. We're starting to have more single-parent children than 2-parent children. And the children who come from 2 parents, the original 2 bio parents, that family is in the minority. Now, there's always been marital strife and divorce. It's nothing new. The big difference today is that people do not make the effort to work things out because of their children's sake, which requires self-denial, requires an effort, like they used to many years ago. Our weak and self-indulgent generation has simply added their children to the list of casualties that stem from divorce. It's not a pretty sight, as I said. So it's no use going on and on about how bad divorce is or how harmful for children who are innocent victims. I think most of us are aware of this because we've been affected by divorce. Either we've been divorced, or somebody close to us has been divorced, or we're in a troubled marriage. So we get it. I don't have to stand here for a half hour and talk about the difficulties of marriage and what happens in divorce. That's what this whole class is about anyways. What I'd like to do is offer some advice on how to avoid divorce. So we've had about 10 classes about divorce, what happens, guilty party, innocent party, all that business. So I want to finish out the series with some, on a positive note, advice that comes from God's word as well as from the experience of those who have had successful marriages. So in this lesson today, my comments will be directed towards those who are not married, like either you are unmarried at the moment or single, or people watching, or people in your family, maybe your own children, you have unmarried children. So I'm kind of aiming my remarks to these people who will eventually marry. In my next lesson, I'm going to focus on those who are already married and how they can help divorce-proof their relationship. So next to becoming a Christian, getting married will be or is already the most significant thing that you're going to do that impacts your life. Nothing impacts your life more than getting married. The fact that I am preaching these lessons not only says that we believe marriage is important, it also says that divorce is a very real threat. The big problem in the church, I don't mean that there's divorce in the church, that we hardly ever talk about it. You know, the fact that this course is being offered, and if you look at our history of courses being offered, even in this congregation, there haven't been a lot of courses about what to do with divorce or how to avoid. You know, we tend to not discuss that a lot. That's why I want to do this lesson here, 7 suggestions on how to prevent a divorce before you marry. Okay? These ideas in a speech given by Dick Marcier at a Divorce Central workshop in Amarillo, Texas a while back. So preventing a divorce. In my counseling, I often visit with couples who are planning to get married. And a lot of times after visiting with them and hearing their stories, my advice is, don't do it. This is a train wreck on its way to happening. You know, you don't like to say that to people. They're in love and they think they want to get married. They've known each other and been in love for all of 3 months. And you're saying to them, oh, you're seeing it, and you're saying, oh man, this is not going to work. I mean, some people just shouldn't marry each other. Some people should just wait. Most people should look carefully and deal with the signs that spell trouble before they marry. The idea is, yeah, I see all this trouble and all this business and we're not getting along now, but we'll fix that once we get married. That doesn't work like that. Life is not like that. Marriage is not like that. So based on this experience and that of other counselors, 7 suggestions for helping you avoid a divorce even before you say, I do. Suggestion number 1, don't marry a non-Christian. These are not going to be like breakthrough ideas. If you desire a Christian home and a Christian family, don't even consider marrying someone who is not a strong Christian. I've often said you date the people you hang around with and you marry the people you date. So if you're dating and hanging with non-Christians, the chances are you'll probably marry a non-Christian. So the purpose of dating is to find someone who you might love and who can return that love. And the thing that young Christian people don't realize is that any number of people can fit that description. In other words, you can become involved with and love almost anyone if that's your only criterion. If my only criterion is I want to find somebody to love and who loves me, if that's the only criterion, well, any number of people can fill that bill. The purpose of marriage, however, for a Christian is to establish a Christian home and a Christian family who will together serve the Lord and His church. That's the purpose of Christian marriage. One of the purposes. So in 2 Corinthians 6:14, Paul says that we shouldn't be bound together with unbelievers, and the primary meaning of that passage, his point was that in trying to worship God properly, we should not be bound with pagans and their practices because this would not be pleasing to the Lord. That's what he's talking about in that passage. Now, in the same way, if we're trying to establish a Christian home where Christ is honored, where children are raised up in the knowledge of Christ, where the home is a tool of God to offer Christian hospitality and service, well, the only way to accomplish this is when both partners acknowledge that Jesus is Lord. It's very hard to do that when only one partner acknowledges Jesus, because you know what? That home also belongs to the other partner. And if they're not, they have a say in what goes on in their home. So if they're not Christians, they may not want to go along with this idea of offering the home as a place of service for the Lord. You can have a successful marriage by marrying a non-Christian. I wouldn't be so naive to say, unless you marry a Christian, you can't have a successful, of course not. A lot of people have successful marriages. A lot of Christians married to non-Christians have a successful marriage. But you won't have a Christian home. and the odds that your children will be strong Christians greatly diminished. Again, not impossible, but you're not putting the odds in your favor. As far as divorce is concerned, when religion is a strong factor with only one of the partners, the chance of eventual divorce grows. It's just statistics, that's all, it's just statistics. So if you marry a non-Christian, realize what you're giving up. What you're giving up is not having children or being loved, that's certainly possible. What you're giving up is a Christian home, a united family, and what you are putting at risk is your own relationship and your faith that will always be at odds. So that's suggestion number one. If you want to avoid divorce before you get married, don't marry someone who's not a Christian. Suggestion number two, reconsider if your parents seriously object. Of course, there are a lot of exceptions here. Lots of loopholes in this particular suggestion. Maybe you're on bad terms with your parents, or maybe they have failed at marriage themselves, or maybe they've been abusive to you in some way. So there are other reasons that render their opinion invalid. But all things being equal, if your parents have been the normal type of parents who have tried to love you and support you despite their own weaknesses and struggles, you should pay careful attention to their advice. Parents may not always know the person you bring home. The girl says, "Oh, but Daddy, you don't know him," or "Oh, Mom, you don't know her." That's true. But they know you. They know their own child. And more importantly, they want what's best for you. And children do not always know what is best for them, even if they're 20 years old or 25 years old. They haven't been around the block a lot, and the parents have. So if your parents have serious doubts and can explain them, it's not enough to say, your dad says, "Well, I just don't like him." Yeah, but why? What is it about him, Dad? I don't know, I just don't like him. Well, that's not enough to go on. If the parents can explain a little bit, you should take time to convince them of the partner's character and merit if they're mistaken. But pay attention to what they say. Marriages bring not only two people together, but they also bring two families together. And it's best to try to win over the family and make peace so that you can live in peace after you're married. Nothing is more aggravating than having a bad relationship with your in-laws, because they're part of your life. If it's a battle every time you have to go over to their house, or every time they come over to your house, and the kids and all that, that's no fun living like that. So before you get married, keep your eyes open. Listen to your parents. All right, suggestion number three. Again, we're talking about divorce-proofing our marriage and suggestions before you get married. Suggestion number three. Watch how your potential mate's parents treat each other. Yeah. Watch how your potential mate's parents treat each other. Until we learn differently, the model for the type of husband or wife that we will be is our own parents. It's not impossible to change, of course, if we want to. That's what this marriage course is, it's all about. Learning new behavior, avoiding certain types of behavior. But until that happens, we will respond to our partner and various marital situations in much the same way our parents did. It's our first go-to position. I'm not saying we can learn new positions, grow as an individual, but the natural impulse is to respond to whatever is going on in the marriage in the way that our parents did, as a first response. Now, the sad exception is that people are usually worse than their parents and not better until they learn. An example of this, someone said, well, where's the biblical example? How about Isaac? How Isaac used Rebekah in the same way that Abraham used Sarah. Abraham offered up his wife to the king to protect himself. I mean, if his plan would have gone through, his wife would have been one of the king's wives. And he was ready to just offer her up so that they wouldn't harm him. When lo and behold, Isaac does the very same thing with Rebekah, one generation down, when he's in trouble. So they may not act like their parents while they're dating, but chances are they will once they're married. This is why it's important to get to know and observe the behavior of your partner's parents so that you can discuss this with them and make the changes needed before you commit. Before there's little desire to change. Before the divorce is the solution. If the young woman's fiancé has a father who's got a bad temper, solves everything with anger and shouting, that may be the go-to position for the son. Be a good thing to talk about that, drill down on that a little bit. Just some signs that you see. These are just like warning signs. Suggestion number 4, do not marry someone who abuses drugs. I include alcohol and all recreational drugs in this category. Alcohol and drug abuse are responsible for half the divorces today. Half. People who drink, even social drinkers, or do dope once in a while before they marry, usually continue to do so after they marry. Marriage by itself does not cure drug and alcohol dependency. For women or for men. I mean, we've seen it even in this congregation, people I've worked with. Young girl who's taken drugs when she's 15, gets married at 21, has a child thinking, the husband thinking, well, she's all grown up now, that's just a childish thing, grew out of it. No. Still abusing and still using after the first child, after the second child, It's a way of life for some people. So the Bible says that drunkards will not inherit the kingdom of heaven, Galatians 5:21. Just show you that scripture there. And neither will those who abuse any other form of drugs or any type of abuse, if you wish, pornography. I could have said, don't marry someone who abuses drugs. I could have said, don't marry someone who abuses, and then just put the line, an empty line, you fill it in. Food, porn, whatever. I tell young people, if you want your life to center on helping another person get off of drugs as a lifetime chore, then marry someone who abuses something, because your divorce is in the bag. Even if you love this person, is this the life you really want for yourself and your children? Can you have a marriage when this is present? Sure. Can you have a very happy one? Well, that's less sure. Suggestion number 5. Find out if your potential mate can manage money. We're stepping on all the toes this morning. When you are dating, the key thing is spending money on gifts and outings. That's not a way to measure if your potential partner is good with money. If they buy you stuff and treat you or take you out, that's fun. We judge our partner's enthusiasm based on his or her spending ability on us. Well, that's not how you judge their money management style. Marriage is more concerned with saving and managing money than spending it. How good is she or he on this? In marriage courses, counselors tell us that in the first 6 months of marriage, the number one cause of arguments is not sex, it's money. So your potential partner's attitude about money, in other words, who controls the money, and how should it be spent, and how important it is, or how it is shared, will determine not only your lifestyle, but also the number of conflicts that you're going to have. Why? Well, because everything costs money. Everything costs money. The food you eat costs money, the transport, everything is somehow touched by money. So there's a lot of reason and a lot of potential for conflict. So how your partner managed the money to buy what you will need will be the subject of a lot of discussions. So make sure that your partner not only knows how to make and spend money, but also knows how to manage and share money as well. Sometimes we're looking at our partner, looking at their earning potential. Wow, my future husband's got a lot of earning potential, and that's great. But how is he at managing the money he earns? It's as difficult to live with a cheapskate as it is putting up with a squanderer. Both things cause grief. Suggestion number 6, don't marry a liar. You think that would be, nobody's perfect, that's true, and sometimes we fall victim to lies. It happens to everybody. However, some people use lying as a coping device, as a way to get what they want, as a method of self-preservation or ego building. Marriage is based on trust. It is the single most important element within the marriage bond. The hardest thing to build, the easiest thing to lose. He who is faithful in a very little thing is faithful also in much, and he who is unrighteous in a very little thing is unrighteous also in much. If your potential partner can't tell the truth on a little thing, how are you going to trust them to tell the truth on stuff that's important or painful? The Lord wasn't only referring to the ability to be responsible here, He also includes the ability to be faithful or true in one's handling of matters dealing with honesty and integrity. If he continually breaks his word over small things, your partner, or if she never follows through exactly on what she says, well, this person has trouble with the truth. A good marriage cannot be built unless there is a willingness to tell the complete truth at all times. Unless there is a trust that the other person's word is solid, you'll always be in doubt. What a terrible way to have a marriage. Not being able to believe anything your partner says, big or small. So if you can't have complete confidence in the other person, and here's the point, enough to put your very life into their hands, don't do it, or don't do it now, meaning don't get married or wait. Unfortunately, what young couples are more concerned about when they're getting married is the party. I call it the party. What am I going to wear, and who's going to do my hair, and did you rent the tuxedos, and the menu, all the energy that goes into that party. And that's, of course, sure, it's great. It's a lifetime thing. You're only supposed to be doing it just one time. I'm not putting down having a great wedding. It's marvelous, it's wonderful, yes. But so many couples don't invest as much energy or time into knowing the person that they're going to get married to. And then they wonder why they're having problems afterward. I repeat it, if you cannot put your life into the hands of your partner and do so confidently, wait a while. There's something missing. There's a piece of information you don't know yet. And then, always when you get to the very last one, somebody's thinking, oh boy, the last one's going to be knocking it out of the park, a thing I never thought of, and here it is. Can they hold down a job? Sounds old-fashioned, doesn't it? But it's a long and miserable life in a marriage with a man, for example, if he's the primary earner, who doesn't like to work. A person who can't hold on to a job. A person who won't take orders from anybody. Or a person who refuses to improve their skills. It's so very difficult to live with a woman, for example, who wants to get married only so she can quit her job. Or only because she wants to get out of her parents' house. Last I knew, getting out of my parents' house was not a viable reason to get married. It wasn't one of the biggies. Now the Bible, it doesn't say anything about women working outside the home. It's silent on that, no opinion on it. Probably because, one of the reasons is because at the time, in that society, when the Bible was written, very few women worked outside the home. So there was no need to comment on it. But it does say something about women and work. Paul says that women should be workers at home. Titus 2 verse 5 talks about women to be sensible, pure workers at home, kind and subject to their own husbands, so on and so forth. The idea was that they were not just at home, but they were keepers of the home. That's the job. So the modern day application is that whether a woman works outside the home or is at home exclusively, she is bound by the same rule of good stewardship as men in the workplace. And the responsibility of being the, quote, keeper or manager of the household. The Bible gives her that role. So going out to work doesn't absolve her of this responsibility. It means that the couple has to be more creative and cooperative in fulfilling the needs of the home. So if your prospective partner likes to sleep too much, or play too much, or hates their job, or hates work in general, prepare to be poor. Prepare to carry the load by yourself. Prepare to spend a lot of time regretting the day you said, I do. So I'm sure in many of the married couples and those who have married off children, here watching this here, you could add more suggestions. I put 7. There are more suggestions. Don't marry on the rebound. That's a good suggestion. Don't marry someone you don't like. You know what we're talking about, right? I love him, but I hate him, I love her, I can't live without her, it's magic, it's electricity, but we don't actually have fun together. People have that relationship. They're drawn physically, sexually, but aside from that, they don't have fun with one another. How many movies have been made on that premise? Right? The guy and the girl and then the third party. The one that she needs to be with over here, But that movie touches us because it happens in life. Don't marry somebody you don't like. Don't marry a non-communicator. He's the strong and silent type. He doesn't say anything. It's so wonderful. There must be so much depth there. There must be so much hiding, just waiting to come out. And when we marry, I'm sure I'll be able to draw all of this out of him. Nope. He's still silent 26 years later. And she's still talking to herself. If you're a talker and you're a communicator, be very careful. Don't marry a flirt. If there's another woman around, he has to make sure that she notices him. Whether it's a server at the restaurant or the hostess at the hotel, if there's another woman around, he has to find a way, he or she, has to find a way to get into that person's orbit. Why? Shut that down. Because that's the way the person is. Somehow that's the way they get their ego fed. Yeah, it's a long life. The point of "this is my husband" is that the key word there, my. This is mine, nobody else's. I tell couples who are already married, maybe having some issues about intimacy, sexual intimacy, well, it's not like it used to be, blah, blah, blah. What do I do? Do I buy lingerie? Do we do a getaway? And usually my first piece of advice is, the first thing to look at, see if you can increase your faithfulness. And they look at me, what? See if you can increase your faithfulness. See if you can demonstrate to your partner a greater level of faithfulness, loyalty, commitment to them and to them alone. That your best words are only for them, your compliments are only for them, your loveliest clothing only for them, your looks, the look of enjoyment, passion, appreciation, your best looks are only for them. Try that first. Because usually that's the thing that is wearing down the relationship. Don't marry a person with a bad temper. We've talked about that. Because that's the way they are. Personally, I believe all the suggestions to avoid divorce before you marry can be summarized into one single positive sentence. Marry somebody who loves Jesus. If the person you marry loves the Lord, then they will love and obey His word, they will serve His church, they will know how to love you with Christ's love, and they will know how to love your children with Christ's love, and they will never leave you for any reason. If they love the Lord, these things are standard equipment. It comes with the package. It doesn't have to be negotiated. It's just part of the package. No marriage with Jesus Christ truly as the Lord of both partner has ended in divorce. It's ended through death or separation, but people who are committed to the Lord both equally and to one another, well, that's the strongest defense against divorce. Okay, so next week we're going to continue this lesson as we examine some of the things that will keep those who are already married. That's why we call it Divorce Busters. All right, so we'll do that next week. In the meantime, I encourage all those who are not getting married to commit their futures to Jesus Christ and search for mates who want to go to heaven as badly as you do. If you marry that guy or that girl, chances are you're going to have a great success. All right, that's our class for this morning. Thank you very much.